Beneath the glimmer of crowns and the grandeur of palaces, history reveals a different story about women once deemed untouchable. These royal figures not only governed empires by day but led lives filled with passion and insurgence by night. Some captivated kings, while others boldly defied them. An unexpected few loved with wild abandon, while many found themselves caught in dangerous romances. This is not a mere fairy tale. It's a concealed history of 25 royal women whose loves reshaped the monarchies, not always culminating in joyous conclusions. Their tales are rife with affairs, scandals, secrets, and the subtle strength that comes with saying yes when society demands obedience. Welcome to the hidden realm of Britain's most scandalous royals. Before we delve deeper, don't forget to subscribe for more incisive explorations into the captivating lives of history's most intriguing characters. We regularly uncover stories like this, and believe us, things only get weirder from here. Also, share in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. Are you up late with the spirits of Queens past, or are you starting your day with a dash of royal intrigue? We will read every reply. First, we have Queen Elizabeth I, a ruler of monumental power who maintained her throne alone. Behind the mask of the Virgin Queen, a title conjured up by adept PR long before the term had any meaning, was Elizabeth Tudor, who shared countless moments with numerous men, though she never surrendered her name. The court's atmosphere buzzed with flirtation and obsession, brimming with secrets that lay just beneath the surface. Central to this world was Elizabeth, sharp-witted and acutely aware of her allure, navigating the delicate dance of desire without ever conceding control. Her closest companion, Robert Dudley, the Earl of Leicester, held a privileged position by her side. With private chambers next to hers, he danced, rode, and whispered sweetly to her during council sessions, conversations shrouded in a veiled intimacy. Rumors swirled beyond the palace's stone walls, echoing through Europe, perhaps even reaching the Vatican, yet nothing could be substantiated. Elizabeth's tactics in affairs were almost political. She wielded emotional ambiguity with chilling precision. When Dudley's wife met a mysterious and untimely death, Elizabeth maintained her distance publicly while keeping him close to her heart and power. Dudley later entered into a disastrous new marriage, leading to Elizabeth's icy silence and his political banishment, not from jealousy, but from a place of imperial authority. Then came the fiery Robert Devereux, the Earl of Essex, a stark contrast to Dudley, youthful and reckless, and coincidentally, Dudley's stepson. In her later years, Elizabeth's affection for Essex stirred worry among her advisers but exhilarated her adversaries. Their liaison might have been either a late-stage flirtation or a politically veiled tragedy, perhaps both. Ultimately, Essex's rebellion led to his execution, a heart-wrenching decision, yet even in sorrow, she remained an enigma. The queen who chose never to marry had suitors willing to risk everything for her favor. Although some branded her cold, others called her a genius, understanding the balance she struck. Marriage equated to yielding, and intimacy meant vulnerability. In a male-dominated world, vulnerability was a luxury she could not afford, compelling her to remain perpetually engaged, yet never fully accessible. Her romantic life unfolded like a carefully curated performance, passionate but always managed, concluding just before vulnerability could seep through the facade. While the mystery of whether she breached her vow of virginity is fascinating, the more compelling inquiry is how she succeeded in commanding affection, desire, and devotion while preserving her dominion over all. Speaking of sovereigns who wielded passion like a weapon, Elizabeth was not alone. A mere few decades later, another young and impulsive monarch would learn the harsh lesson that giving one's heart to the wrong man can cost far more than just a crown. In our exploration of royal intrigue, we turn our gaze to Mary, Queen of Scots. If Elizabeth the first exemplified the art of restraint as a weapon, then Mary embodied a fierce, fiery spirit that burned with an irresistible passion. Her life unfolded like a tragic opera, replete with romance, rebellion, and whispered secrets, every historian's dream and every dramatist's delight. Born into nobility before she could take her first steps, she married a king before she could cast a vote, and was imprisoned before she could even think of retirement. Life for Mary was a whirlwind, where decisions were often rushed, and many were poorly calculated. Her first marriage to Francis II of France resembled a fairy tale, cherished by poets but dreaded by political minds. This foreign queen, a stunning teenager amidst the French aristocracy, found herself wed to a delicate and anxious prince who embodied fragility. His early death turned Mary into not only a grieving widow but also a pawn in the game of politics. France had little need for a young Scottish queen craving her rightful throne, prompting her return home where the sound of bagpipes dominated, a landscape where politics could be as lethal as a battlefield. Back in Scotland, her fateful decision to marry for love brought her to Henry Stuart, Lord Darnley, a man who was as charming as he was disastrous. He was her cousin and paradoxically the most available match in royal circles. Initially, their union dazzled the nobility, but soon Darnley's jealousy and immaturity surfaced, revealing a dangerous side. He demanded equal power with Mary, and when she turned him down, he resorted to self-destructive acts cloaked as rebellion. The pivotal moment arrived with the assassination of Mary's secretary, David Rizzio. A close confidant, he fell victim to Darnley's machinations and the conspiracies of resentful nobles. Rizzio was brutally taken from Mary's side during a midnight raid, a horrific spectacle that shocked even the most jaded courtiers. Surprisingly calm despite her pregnancy, Mary ultimately forgave Darnley and began plotting her escape. Then came the mysterious explosion of Darnley's residence, his body later found strangled, not burned, in the garden. Rumours swirled, and the prime suspect was the notorious James Hepburn, Earl of Bothwell, a man skilled in chaos. Shockingly, within mere weeks, Mary married him. The timing seemed almost a declaration of defiance against her critics, a choice riddled with ambiguity. Was it love or a desperate bid for protection? History remains divided. What's evident, however, is the calamity that followed her hasty marriage. Rebellion erupted, and the English court gawked with glee. In a matter of months, Mary was forced to relinquish the throne in favour of her infant son, James VI, and fled to England, seeking refuge from Elizabeth I, her cousin. In retrospect, this was a miscalculation akin to entrusting a fox with your poultry. For 19 long years, Mary's life was confined behind Elizabeth's walls. During this time, her legend as a tragic figure flourished. Romanticized as a queen betrayed by love, she became a dangerous asset to be wary of. Accusations of plotting against Elizabeth would ultimately seal her fate, culminating in her execution at Fotheringhay Castle. Witnesses recalled that the executioner's first strike was a miss, a poignant reflection of Mary's messy, tragic life. A tale of contrasts defined her journey, faith battling freedom, passion clashing with prudence, and the weight of her crown lingering in the hands of others. Mary sought love in the guise of loyalty and misread desire for destiny, mistaking forgiveness for safety. Yet, even centuries later, her story captivates, leaving historians torn between sympathy and reproach. Perhaps therein lies the essence of her narrative, the tragic complexity of choices that defy simple moral interpretations. As Mary met her grim fate, another royal, younger and equally reckless, was fast learning that passion in high places can be even more lethal than political maneuvering. With two queens fallen, the royal courts reveal themselves more soap opera than sanctum. If you're fascinated by this unraveling history, Remember to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to share where you're watching from in the comments below. Are you sinking into the depths of the night, or stealing a moment of scandalous delight during your lunch break? We are keeping an eye on you. Catherine Howard arrived at the royal court like a flicker of fire, youthful, enchanting, and perilously raw. As a young girl thrust into a world where mirrors reflected the harsh realities of survival, she was both fortunate and unfortunate, connected to the powerful Howard dynasty but raised in homes where love was bartered and guidance was sporadic. By the time her destiny intertwined with that of Henry VIII, she was still navigating the complexities of womanhood in garments meant for a queen, unaware of the heavy burdens a royal marriage would entail. Her early life was filled with secret romances and fleeting confidences, navigating the intricate web of noble households where flirtation was a currency and promises went unrecorded. Francis Darham remembered her from these youthful days, their bond marked by an intimacy that skirted the boundaries of propriety, yet was not atypical in an era when personal alliances were as crucial as political ones. Their relationship, as suggested by scant evidence, appeared to be a tender, innocent affair, characterized by secret notes and whispered vows, a romance more fitting for a coming-of-age novel than a royal scandal. But everything shifted dramatically when Catherine, hitherto an obscure girl, was suddenly elevated to the status of queen. Henry VIII, now an older man, presided over a court that was a theatre of grandeur and scrutiny, and Catherine entered the scene, captivating all with her striking beauty. The narrative felt like a fairy tale in a Tudor setting, the maid transformed into a queen, dazzling her monarch and lifting some burdens, though not the weight of expectations. Yet, in this court, fairy tales came with caveats. The crown was heavy, not just with jewels, but also with a brutal reality of reputation and the lurking fear that any past indiscretion could be wielded as a weapon against her. Thomas Coe Pepper soon entered her life, embodying the passionate subplot, a handsome figure who sparked rumors and scandal, his presence reframing innocent past encounters into something darker. Historians cannot ignore the thin threads of allegations, secret encounters, intercepted love letters, and confidences that ignited perilous flames when mishandled. Catherine's tragic narrative is intertwined with timing. The shadows of her predecessors who faced similar fates loomed large over her. The palace was a crucible of political volatility. With none of the political savvy of those who expertly navigated court intrigues, Catherine struggled with the complexities of royal interaction. How to seem appealing yet non-threatening, how to charm without tarnishing her name. While Elizabeth would later don solitude like armor, Catherine sought to fulfill both roles of lover and wife, ultimately falling short of securing the most vital one. Courtly adversaries and factional rivalries arrived with ruthless efficiency, pouncing upon her with damaging accusations, some trivial, others credible, often exaggerated, triggering an investigation machinery where allegation and guilt were precariously intertwined. The trial, a spectacle stripped of empathy, reshaped the youthful queen into a symbol of wrongdoing. In her demise, stripped of royal protections, Catherine's fate echoed the harsh realities of both politics and personal choices. Her story is layered with moral nuance, a blend of victimhood and agency, naivety and fatal decisions, resulting in a complex portrayal that evades simple categorization. Entering an institution that demanded a ruthless edge, she faced punishment for her inability to muster it. Thus, her tragic end extends beyond the fall of a queen. It symbolizes a flawed system that adorns youth with crowns, expecting them to weather tumultuous storms they had no part in provoking. Amidst a historical landscape where court playwrights framed her as a cautionary tale, Catherine stands as a real human bathed in shadows. Her early relationships misinterpreted or deliberately misrepresented, transmuted into high treason. Her narrative serves as a poignant reminder that in the chronicles of royalty, passion and peril are often interlinked, orchestrated by calculating courtiers and monarchs with vendettas. And while Catherine's name may symbolize youthful folly gone awry, there exists another lesser-known woman within this Tudor tale, a figure whose allure and decisions would ignite a scandal rooted in both commonalities and stark contrasts. Her journey would span the courts of France and the boudoirs of England, beginning with a sister who, while perhaps less famous, was equally skilled at turning attention into fortuitous advantage. 4. Mary Boleyn. In the grand drama of history, while her sister ascended to the heights of queenship, Mary Boleyn emerged as a harbinger of courtly intrigue, mastering the art of allure long before the throne beckoned. She became the darkly fascinating figure, her name reverberating through the hidden corners of scandalous tales. Where and sought glory and notoriety, Mary gracefully tiptoed on the razor's edge of risk, wielding charm like a weapon. Her formative years unfolded in the illustrious French court, a breeding ground for sophistication. As a young lady in waiting, Mary's reputation for social grace spread like wildfire, her flirtations captivating even the highest echelons of French society. Rumors cascaded across the English Channel. The French king reportedly dubbed her the English Mayor, a title steeped in irony, illustrating the blurred lines of admiration and envy. What's undeniable is Mary's intricate comprehension of the mechanics behind royal life. In these opulent halls, one's reputation served as a formidable currency, and cultivating intimacy, real or perceived, was a swift avenue to influence. Upon her return to England, she became linked with the ambitious Henry VIII, a ruler still awaiting the monstrous legacy he would later embody. In his youthful pursuit of pleasure, Mary caught his attention, an enduring mistress who became an unforgettable chapter in the annals of the court. Though their relationship was politically unspoken, it was an open secret, adorned with extravagant gifts and properties bestowed upon her, particularly during her childbearing years, a source of lingering speculation regarding true parentage. In retrospect, it's easy to visualize Mary as a mere pawn, a gentle prologue to Anne's more vivid ascent. Yet the reality is layered. Mary's ambition was of a subtler nature. She embraced opportunities without outright seeking dominance, seamlessly stepping aside as a sister blazed a path. Perhaps she recognized the peril of royal favor, warm from a distance but searing when approached. In an unforeseen twist befitting a Tudor novel, Mary made a staggering choice for a woman of her status. She married for love. Her second husband, William Stafford, was a soldier lacking both riches and noble pedigree. Their clandestine union ignited scandal, fracturing her ties to family and the court. And, now seated upon the throne, erupted in anger, not solely over the match itself, but for the public disgrace it inflicted. Mary had violated the unwritten rule of nobility: never let personal decisions cause societal disrepute. Forced from court, Mary found solace in anonymity, far from the tumult and drama that characterized her youth, thereby avoiding the catastrophic fate that enveloped her sister. Indeed, her story speaks of a quiet, resolute rebellion. In an era where women parlored their worth through marriage, Mary chose the audacious path of self-exile on her own terms. Her legacy carries complexity. To some, she represents a cautionary narrative, evidence that drawing royal interest doesn't guarantee ascension. To others, she is a beacon of resilience, wherein engaged in high-stakes gambles and faltered. Mary sought her own refuge and retained her life, her kin, and perhaps an unparalleled treasure in Tudor England: peace. Still, her tale lingers. Her voluntary withdrawal from the limelight casts a long shadow, as her sister Anne would stride boldly into the world's gaze, never to retreat. And Boleyn would etch her name into the chronicles of history, the emblem of a tragic and notorious royal affair. Yet, it was from Mary that Anne learned the perilous dance with danger, a lesson that would yield devastating consequences. 5. Anne Boleyn. a figure who irrevocably altered the destiny of a kingdom with a simple word: no. This deliberate dismissal, executed with precision and tenacity, catapulted Anne Boleyn into the annals of history as one of Britain's most powerful yet tragically marked personas. If Mary Boleyn provided the initial glimpse, and was the headliner. Daring, astute, and ruthlessly cunning, her affair with Henry VIII not only stirred scandal, it dismantled England's allegiance to Rome, rewrote the European political landscape, and left behind a grim legacy of betrayal and blood. And didn't fit the conventional mold of beauty by the standards of her era, yet she possessed something far more compelling, an undeniable presence. Intelligent, musically gifted, fluent in French, and educated beyond societal expectations for women, she enchanted suitors without the need for a royal tiara. Men were drawn to her, fully aware that they risked getting singed by her allure. Among her earliest admirers was Henry Percy, heir to Northumberland, whose secret engagement with Anne almost sparked a major political crisis before it was crushed, likely at the behest of Cardinal Wolsey, who would later become one of her fiercest adversaries. This broken engagement marked merely the initial blow in Anne's long battle against a system that would ultimately bend to her will. Her experiences at the French court, where flirtation was a matter of survival, profoundly influenced Anne. She mastered its nuances and brought that sophistication back to the English court, swiftly distinguishing herself. Her intelligence and allure were as daring as her choice to withhold herself from the king. Henry, used to submission, found her defiance intoxicating. Their affair progressed through secret meetings, fervent letters, and a political game that resembled a drawn-out chess match. Henry offered her everything but marriage, and she adamantly declined, not out of morality, but strategy, and sought legitimacy, security, and power rather than simply becoming his mistress. Amidst a milieu where women were easily cast aside, she aimed to become irreplaceable. As Anne observed, Henry began to reshape the very foundations of authority around her. For nearly a decade, England lingered in uncertainty. The king's marriage to Catherine of Aragon spiraled into a national crisis as the Pope refused to annul it. Fueled by impatience, Henry proclaimed himself the head of the Church of England, with Anne now pivotal to the emerging narrative, a muse and scapegoat for the nation's fracture. When they eventually wed, albeit secretly at first, Anne was already pregnant with the heir Henry longed for. However, the arrival of their daughter, Elizabeth, instead brought about a profound irony. Henry's court was notorious for forgetting swiftly, but history has preserved what he could not foresee. That child would mature into one of England's finest monarchs. As Anne's initial stronghold of influence began to falter, the expectations placed upon her became increasingly burdensome. She suffered multiple miscarriages, and the king, never known for his lasting patience, began to gravitate toward Jane Seymour, a woman whose quiet virtue presented fewer complications. The court sensed this shift and turned cold, leaving Anne, now queen yet unstable, to navigate treacherous waters filled with feigned warmth and treacherous silences. Her downfall came swiftly and savagely. An intricate web of allegations emerged: adultery, incest, treason. The charges were outrageously implausible yet devastatingly effective. Former allies, like Thomas Wyatt, who had once been captivated by her spark, retreated into silence. The trial became a farce, its outcome predetermined. Throughout her final hours, Anne's calm demeanor unsettled even her foes. She refrained from desperate pleas, instead offering sharp observations. Yet, her tale transcends mere tragedy. It embodies complexity. She was neither merely a saint nor a seductress, but an extraordinary entity, a woman who recognized the perilous nature of ambition in an unforgiving world. She wagered everything on herself and ultimately faced ruin, yet her legacy lived on, not solely through her daughter. but in a nation irrevocably transformed by her ascent and demise. Centuries later, another woman would channel her passions in a world shaped by intrigue and remorse. Her fall, while less catastrophic, would carry its own theatrical flair. Her name was Lady Caroline Lamb, whose profound misstep lay in loving a man who mastered the art of heartbreak. In the tale of Lady Caroline Lamb, we encounter a figure who once epitomized passion and chaos. While she famously labeled her lover as mad, bad, and dangerous to know, the man who inspired that phrase would become infamous, relegating Caroline to a mere footnote in someone else's narrative. Yet, her story, steeped in social satire and psychological tumult, is a striking chapter in history, capable of leaving its mark on the most refined of settings. Born an aristocrat and bound by marriage to a political figure, Caroline was more than just another Regency woman seeking the limelight. She was a tempest in the guise of nobility, with unyielding desires and no self-imposed limits. Born into a life of privilege, she was the niece of Georgiana, Duchess of Devonshire, a woman renowned for her own scandals. By the time she wed William Lamb, a future prime minister known for his patience, Caroline was already drawn to extremes, intellectually, romantically, and emotionally. Admiration was never enough. She yearned to be engulfed by passion. Then, she crossed paths with Lord Byron. Initially, their dalliance seemed a quintessential Regency affair. Him, the tortured poet with his many charms, and her, the adventurous wife seeking thrills. Yet, clichés rarely culminate in chaos without consequences. What began as a flirtation spiraled into an obsession, with Caroline infatuated and Byron flitting between admirers, treating her devotion as both inspiration and annoyance. Their connection may have been brief in its chronology, but its repercussions were monumental. Caroline would appear at Byron's residence unannounced, one time disguising herself as a page boy, and send him locks of hair, mixed between reality and imagination, alongside letters that oscillated between brilliance and despair. When Byron chose to end their relationship in a manner befitting his dramatic flair, coldly and publicly, Caroline's world collapsed. In a society quick to judge, she bore the brunt of the blame. Women who endured silently were spared, while those who expressed their suffering faced harsh rebuke. In response, Caroline penned a novel titled Glenarvan, a thinly disguised critique of Byron and the elite class that bolstered him. She cast herself as a tragic heroine and Byron as the villain, donning a literary cloak of resentment. This work, filled with scandalous revelations, only served to tarnish her already fragile standing. Her spouse, William, remained by her side longer than anyone anticipated, perhaps out of obligation or shame. Yet, her increasingly erratic behavior made it difficult for him to defend her. In the twilight of her life, Caroline found herself isolated from society, with a reputation tainted and yet, paradoxically, unforgettable. Critics grudgingly acknowledged a certain brilliance within her reckless spirit. The allure of Caroline's life extends beyond her romance with Byron. It is rooted in her defiance against the roles assigned to women of her status. She refused to be the cast-off lover or the quiet victim, choosing instead to etch her own narrative onto the pages of history, imperfections and passions alike, challenging everyone to pay attention. Unlike those tragic figures who succumbed to early deaths or overwhelming beauty, Caroline did not vanish without a trace. Her story slipped into the margins of others' legacies, yet occasionally resurfaces, reminding us of the storm she once was. Her legacy did not end in banishment or tragedy, but rather in a respectful silence that echoed with remembrance. At a time when women were expected to confine their desires behind closed doors, Caroline shattered the very curtains that sought to hide them, igniting a blaze of rebellion. As we turn to the next chapter of power and seduction, we discover a new figure adept at navigating love, authority, and public life. A duchess, a beacon of fashion, and a master of a complicated marriage arrangement that seemed as effortless as a game of chance. This enigmatic woman was Georgiana, and in Georgian England, she was not just a participant. She was the main event, the spellbinding center of attention. 7. Georgiana Cavendish, Duchess of Devonshire. If Lady Caroline Lamb is the whisper of scandal, then Georgiana is the unmistakable roar of spectacle. She embodied everything society deemed inappropriate for women in 18th century Britain, yet captivated all who laid eyes on her. As a duchess, she was a fashion icon, a political influencer, and a living contradiction, eliciting adoration, envy, and slander. Perhaps most perilously, she possessed an acute self-awareness. In an era where women were hushed, Georgiana's voice rang out eloquently through silk and diamonds. Hailing from the aristocratic Spencer lineage, yes, that Spencer family which would later produce Diana, Georgiana was born to be the center of admiration. She married at just 17 into one of Britain's wealthiest families, becoming the Duchess of Devonshire, adorned with sumptuous gowns and sprawling estates, and burdened by a husband who preferred the company of dogs over engaging conversation. Emotionally distant, the Duke of Devonshire was cold and practically devoid of interest and intimacy, save when it served his purposes. The radiant Georgiana, eager for affection, soon realized that her status relegated her to hosting duties while feeling like an intruder in her own life. Turning to her resources, she wielded her beauty, intellect, political acumen, and indeed, passionate affairs. Among these was her notorious liaison with Charles Grey, a future Prime Minister, and, in many ways, her troublesome soulmate. Their relationship transcended mere gossip. It was heartfelt, genuine, and defied the constraints of her title. While still wed to the Duke, she became pregnant with Grey's child, a scandal of monumental proportions even for the tumultuous 18th century. The repercussions were harsh, forcing Georgiana into exile where she gave birth to a daughter, who was taken from her and raised by Grey's family. Her return to England would come with the condition of never claiming motherhood over her child, a grief that shadowed her for a lifetime, though seldom articulated. Yet Georgiana's tale is more than mere tragedy. It is one of using her social capital to carve out a space in politics, a domain traditionally reserved for men. As a fervent supporter of the Whigs, she campaigned openly for Charles James Fox, springing to action with a boldness that astonished and shocked London while thrilling the media. Caricature artists portrayed her in humorous poses, while pamphleteers accused her of corrupt political dealings. Despite the scrutiny, she persistently pressed forward. Then there was her complex friendship with Lady Elizabeth Foster, who became not just a confidant but also a housemate and part of a romantic entanglement that would create modern-day headlines. The Duke, disinterested in Georgiana's emotional well-being, managed to take Elizabeth as his mistress, yet instead of parting ways, Georgiana welcomed Elizabeth into their home. This arrangement, fraught and emotionally charged yet publicly accepted, persisted for decades, its true nature sparking debate, resignation, affection, or a strategic blend of both. Georgiana transformed what might have been a social disaster for someone less adept into a refined lifestyle. Through it all, she managed to preserve her status as the toast of high society. Her fashion choices became the subject of both admiration and ridicule. With towering powdered wigs and extravagant plumes, she turned her financial missteps into fodder for whispers. Despite staggering debts, her influence remained unmatched, exemplifying the duality of a cautionary tale and a cultural luminary, a testament to a woman who could embrace a reckless life and still command the attention of those around her. As Georgiana's life progressed, her final years took a gentler turn, marked by quiet tragedies. Her health waned, her financial standing crumbled, and her political circles dimmed. Yet, Her legacy remained indelible. She forged a pathway for women in political discourse, not by seeking permission, but by captivating every room with her charm. In contrast to the flame-out of Caroline Lamb, Georgiana flickered just enough to leave a lasting mark. She was no conventional rebel. Instead, she was an unsettling presence, one who outperformed the men around her while exuding grace. Enter Margaret, the next royal, who did not require clever staging to capture public adoration. Naturally drawn to the limelight, she danced with rock legends and loved as if unburdened by headlines. The rebellious sister, the icon, always one to disrupt a gathering simply with her arrival. Her name, Margaret. And make no mistake, she was no mere side note. 8. The enigmatic Princess Margaret, Countess of Snowdon, gracefully wielded her cigarette like a scepter, embodying a royal paradox. Born into privilege yet never permitted to fully embrace it, Margaret was the living testament to the unresolved contradictions of monarchy, splendid yet constrained, fervent yet observed, adored yet admonished by the very institution that nurtured her. Not the heir but the spare, she transformed her secondary status into a bold performance. From the outset, she played the more dramatic counterpart to her sister, Queen Elizabeth II. Where Elizabeth epitomized duty, Margaret revelled in her unpredictability, especially in matters of the heart. Unlike Elizabeth, Margaret wasn't molded for rule. She was sculpted for allure, and she radiated it vibrantly. Yet, beneath the gleaming jewels and sharp wit was a woman caught in conflict with the unwritten rules that governed royal lives. Marry for duty, smile for the media, conceal your emotions. Her first significant heartbreak was both public and poignant. Her love for Group Captain Peter Townsend, a divorced war hero. In the conservativeness of the 1950s, their love was not merely scandalous, it was deemed institutionally intolerable. With the Church of England, the press, and Parliament involved, her relationship morphed into a national discourse on royal propriety. The ultimatum was clear and brutal: marry Townsend and forfeit your titles, or choose love and lose your place in the royal hierarchy. For a woman steeped in the veneration of public duty yet yearning for personal liberty, it was a harrowing choice. Ultimately, she chose to let him go, a decision framed as noble by the press and devastating by biographers. Afterward, she rarely revisited the subject. What followed was expected to be a fairy tale: marriage to the dashing photographer Anthony Armstrong Jones. Their initial connection sparked excitement. He was an artist, a commoner, a refreshing contrast to the rigid society she knew. He addressed her as in public but Margaret in private, capturing her essence in ways no royal had been portrayed before, intimately, authentically. They became Britain's glamorous duo. Yet, hidden beneath this dazzling exterior was a marriage unraveling. Anthony grew creatively and romantically restless while Margaret, accustomed to being in the limelight, noticed his waning attention. Distractions arose, culminating in affairs that were the subject of hushed tones and sensational headlines. Their existence, once a stage for public admiration, became mere fodder for public gossip. In her retreat to mystique, her enchanting island hideaway, Margaret hosted lavish parties and embraced relationships, including one with Rhodey Llewellyn, a much younger man. The tabloids thrived on the drama, while the royal family cringed in dismay. But Margaret, with her trademark composure, showed little concern for societal expectations. Educated in the art of silent suffering, she chose instead to strike out rebelliously, whether on sun-kissed Caribbean shores or amid the revelry of Kensington Palace soirees. Living by her own tenets, she gradually unraveled the facade of serenity that her sister had labored to uphold. Her divorce in 1978 marked a historic shift, the first for a senior royal since Henry VIII, shattering long-standing traditions and protocols. But by then, Margaret's priorities lay less with public approval and more with reclaiming her life. A lifetime spent juggling love and royal duty became unsustainable, leading her to embrace the truth. Harmony between the two was a mere illusion. In her later years, Margaret's world dimmed, overshadowed by illness and the weight of relentless expectations. Yet, even in decline, she remained quintessentially herself, sharp, dramatic, and gloriously human. Never crowned, she wore her life's tumult as if it were a royal mantle, paving a pathway for future royals to embrace independence, honesty, and a life colored by their own choices. Yet even Margaret's carefully staged rebellion seems restrained when held against her predecessor, another royal daughter renowned for her adventurous spirit and controversial friendships with artists. A muse in her own right, her name was Louise, and where discretion was expected, she made a habit of defying it. When even Queen Victoria raised an eyebrow at your social circle, it marked the arrival of an entirely different royal narrative. 9. Princess Louise, Duchess of Argyll. Imagine a free spirit adorned with a tiara, then instructed to maintain decorum. This is the essence of Princess Louise. As the sixth offspring and the fourth daughter of Queen Victoria, she entered a world defined by silence, strict obedience, and moral rectitude, none of which resonated with her wild spirit. Unlike her siblings, who conformed to tradition as if laced in a tight corset, Louise was a relentless rebel, pulling at every stitch. She was a painter and sculptor, a traveler who thrived in the company of those who bypassed the formality of curtsies. If Princess Margaret embodied rebellion, then Louise was defiance molded with a chisel. A true artist at heart, Louise's creative talents were acknowledged by Victoria, a monarch who viewed creativity with a mix of pride and skepticism. Her dedication to sculpture went beyond mere royal amusement. It was a serious pursuit. Unusual for women of her station in 19th century Britain, she trained at the National Art Training School and created works respected by the artistic elite, including a statue of her mother. Ironically, this tribute came despite Victoria's frequent disapproval of her daughter's social freedom. It was not solely Louise's art that raised eyebrows, but also the company she kept, bohemian intellectuals including writers and artists, some of whom weren't nobility. Among the whispers was her close association with Joseph Edgar Boehm, the royal sculptor, spending considerable time in his studio, an arrangement filled with scandalous implications. Following Boehm's untimely death in 1890, rumors flourished that he had perished in her presence, with some reports alleging that he died in her quarters. The palace, as always, remained tight-lipped. Another man entwined with Louise was Sir Edwin Landseer, a renowned artist known for his poignant depictions of animals and nobility, who was older and reportedly enamored with her. The true nature of their relationship is a topic of ongoing debate among historians, shrouded in the typical Victorian reticence to document scandal. What is evident, however, is Louise's attraction to artistic souls over the stifling aristocrats who promised an easier royal life but far less intrigue. In the realm of marriage, her choice was almost revolutionary for the royal family. She married John Campbell, the Marquis of Lorne, a commoner by royal standings, and a figure whose own quirks triggered plenty of speculation. Their union, outwardly proper yet privately intricate, saw them often living apart while Louise embarked on travels that fueled rumors of her independence and joy in solitude. Nonetheless, she remained an active force in public life. Louise championed women's education, subtly supported suffragette movements, and advocated for a modernization of the monarchy's public image. She was sharp-witted, confident, and lived unapologetically, rarely seeking others' validation. Even in her later years, she maintained a vibrant presence at court, outliving all her siblings and much of her generation who sought to confine her spirit. Her romantic endeavors linger in shadows and hisses, Yet what distinctly sets Louise apart from her contemporaries is the intentional way she lived outside the norms of her time. While her mother wrote about moral discipline and her brothers donned military garb, Louise was busy sculpting, conversing, and traveling, perhaps even loving on her terms. Her supposed scandals, carefully orchestrated, reinforced her agency rather than revealed carelessness. Louise was bound by the velvet gloves of Victorian propriety, but the next royal would dramatically shift the script. Boldly parading her affairs and enchanting suitors, she would turn royal exile into a dramatic spectacle for all to witness. This was Queen Caroline of Brunswick, whose very essence was scandal itself, embracing it as if it were her native tongue. 10. Queen Caroline of Brunswick. If there was ever a monarch who approached scandal as if it were an exhilarating game, it was undoubtedly Queen Caroline of Brunswick. An arranged bride to King George IV, their union can hardly be described as anything but a marriage of mutual disdain, public disgrace, and an intertwined personal drama that continuously found its way into the realm of politics. From her arrival in England to her last ill-fated attempt to attend her coronation, Caroline frequently thumbed her nose at royal customs. Perhaps the most glaring breach of protocol occurred in her romantic entanglements. Born in Germany, Caroline came to England in 1795 to enter a political marriage with George, then the Prince of Wales. Unfortunately, the partnership was on shaky ground from the very start. George already had a secret marriage that Parliament had refused to recognise, and an array of mistresses who wielded more influence than any love he might have felt for Caroline. Their first meeting was marked by George's request for brandy, while Caroline later remarked on his alarming size, finding him nothing like the handsome depiction in his portraits. As for their wedding night, the stories are infamous. George allegedly passed out drunk, leaving low expectations for their union, which, already faltering, did not manage to meet. Nevertheless, duty prevailed, resulting in the birth of their daughter, Princess Charlotte, within 9 months. Soon after, George cast Caroline out of his life, his palace, too. She was relegated to a modest residence, provided with a small staff, and placed in a form of isolation that could have either embittered or empowered. Caroline, however, chose empowerment. From the outset, her life was strikingly unconventional. She surrounded herself with musicians, intellectuals, and a diverse staff who became friends and confidants, and, according to whispers, perhaps more. Among her household was Bartolomeo Pergami, an Italian servant whose swift rise within her ranks raised eyebrows. From courier to chamberlain, he soon became a fixture at her side, sharing more than work during their time in Italy, where she lived in semi-exile. The nature of their relationship sparked parliamentary debates, with British spies in Italy sending back reports of their clandestine dinners and late-night visits, suggesting a bond that was anything but professional. The government, determined to keep Caroline from reclaiming her title as queen, constructed a legal case around these rumours. Upon George IV ascending the throne in 1820, he instigated a formal investigation, launching the Pains and Penalties Bill aimed at stripping Caroline of her title and publicly shaming her. What ensued was a sensational trial. Caroline made her grand return to England full of popularity, greeted by throngs who viewed her not as a disgraced spouse, but as a valiant woman standing against a corrupt system. The public adored her, while the press clung to her story. Despite the House of Lords passing the bill, it was eventually retracted due to the backlash from the masses. Technically defeated, Caroline emerged symbolically victorious. The monarchy was humiliated, the king revealed to be spiteful. Caroline briefly assumed the role of a people's queen. Yet, the final chapter awaited her when she attempted to join George's coronation in 1821, only to be literally turned away from Westminster Abbey. In the days that followed, illness claimed her, and her final request was to be buried as the injured Queen of England. Even in death, her statement resounded loudly. The complexities of her romantic life brimmed with implications and insinuations. Perhaps her feelings for pergamy were genuine. Maybe she reveled in the scandal far more than the restrictions of royal etiquette. Regardless, she illustrated the outcome when a royal woman chose not to remain silent. She lived her life with boldness, resistance, and no regrets. As she stirred palaces with her rumors and legal battles, the next royal on our list was set to capture the world's fascination with a drastically different approach. Rather than staging grand spectacles, she opted for authentic sentiment. Emerging as the most photographed woman globally, a queen embodying the notion of empathy amid a fractured marriage, her romantic affairs would weave through countless discussions across breakfast tables and continents. Her name was Diana, and her heartache would irrevocably alter the monarchy. In the realm of modern royalty, few stories resonate as deeply as that of Lady Diana Spencer, the beloved Princess of Wales. She stepped into the world's gaze when she married Prince Charles, setting the stage for what seemed like a fairy tale. Yet, beneath the dazzling facade, the public witnessed the unraveling of a woman grappling with a tumultuous emotional crisis that would define her legacy. Diana captivated hearts worldwide, but she was also a subject of intense scrutiny, her life dissected in the very tabloids that proclaimed her an icon. Upon marrying Charles in 1981 at just 20, she was already cloaked in the myths of aristocracy. Her shyness and striking beauty made her an idealized figure. However, the enchantment quickly faded. Behind the grandeur of a televised wedding and an extravagant gown, Diana felt like a lamb led to slaughter. The marriage was marred by coldness, with Charles emotionally distant and preoccupied with his longtime confidant, Camilla Parker Bowles. What he offered was not warmth but isolation and a passive expectation of compliance. Amid this heartache, unexpected support emerged in the form of James Hewitt, a cavalry officer whose attentive listening provided solace in Diana's fractured world. Their bond, stemming from an innocent student-mentor relationship, blossomed into a passionate affair during the late 1980s. Although it captured the public's imagination when revealed, it was also a rare glimpse of Diana's quest for humanity amidst the chaos. Yet, as history would show, this was just the beginning. Enter Hasnat Khan, the heart surgeon described as the love of her life, a grounded man, removed from the pomp of royal life who offered the emotional anchor Diana desperately sought. Their relationship was shrouded in secrecy, wreathed in disguises and clandestine meetings, but ultimately fell prey to the relentless pressures of fame. Diana's brief but extravagant romance with Dodi Fayed in the summer of 1997, glimmering with yachts and champagne, represented freedom for some but also marked the precarious nature of her existence. Tragically, their love story was cut short in the infamous Pont de l'Alma tunnel in Paris, a catastrophic event that solidified her myth. It was not merely the loss of a princess that resonated. It was the shattering of any remaining faith in the monarchy's ability to govern its own narrative. Beyond the tabloid sensationalism, Diana's experiences exposed the impossible expectations thrust upon her by the monarchy and the public alike. They wanted her to embody grace yet remain relatable. Despite the privileges she enjoyed, she became one of the first royals subjected to constant public scrutiny. Her romantic endeavors symbolized not only a search for love but a desperate quest for personal liberation, marked by the struggle to reconcile duty with desire. Each affair blurred the lines between duty and autonomy, every intimate connection recast as treachery. Nevertheless, she emerged from this chaos with dignified resilience, embodying emotional transparency in a world designed for silence. Diana's relationships were not merely romantic entanglements, they were vital steps in her movement towards self-actualization, each lover reminding the world that even those within palatial walls could yearn for freedom. Yet, Diana was not the first to defy royal expectations. Long before her, there was Catherine of Valois, whose bold choice of love initiated a new dynasty. Unlike Diana, she is often remembered not for rebellion, but for her remarkable second chance at life. Together, these narratives weave a rich tapestry of royal life, filled with longing, struggle, and the eternal quest for authenticity amidst the constraints of duty. 12. Catherine of Valois. Long before the age of tabloids, paparazzi, or televised royal nuptials, stood Catherine of Valois, an enigmatic queen consort whose scandal reverberates through the lineage of British royalty even today. Unlike the bold Anne Boleyn or the photogenic Diana, Catherine's narrative sparked a royal legacy and stirred the very foundation of monarchy, a truth no one, particularly her son, could overlook. Born in 1401 to Charles VI of France and Isabeau of Bavaria, Catherine entered a world where marriage was a strategic game of alliances rather than romantic union, masked by ornate ceremonies. Her father battled severe mental illness, and her kingdom was engulfed in the chaos of the 100 Years' War, rendering her little more than a pawn in political machinations before she was even literate. Just like countless princesses before her, she was dispatched as a diplomatic prize, destined to unite warring factions. Her groom, Henry V of England, a renowned warrior, briefly claimed her as his bride for just 2 years, a time filled with both affection and uncertainty. From their union came a son, the future Henry VI, a flicker of hope amidst the tumult. But just as swiftly, tragedy struck. Henry V passed away during military campaigns in France, leaving the young Catherine, a widow at 21, burdened with a 9-month-old heir. In royal circles, this rendered her both inconsequential and perilous. A dowager queen was expected to silently grieve, shun political drama, and refrain from remarriage without the council's sanction, which she never received. Catherine, however, was no mere shadow, her French beauty and vivacity defying expectations. What unfolded next remains cloaked in mystery, though many debate it as one of the most daring acts of romantic defiance in medieval royal history. Enter Owen Tudor, a humble Welsh squire serving in her court. The origins of their affair are unclear. Some believe it sprouted from a gentle attraction, while others hint at a clandestine marriage hidden from the prying eyes of inheritance. What is certain, however, is that their bond birthed at least 6 children. For a dowager queen to embark on such a relationship was audacious. Starting a family with him was a potential constitutional turmoil waiting to unfold. Their secretive partnership was crucial for Catherine's survival, as acknowledging it would have threatened not only her standing but also her children's futures. Even in the shadows, their connection was revolutionary. Catherine's choice for love over lineage subverted conventions and helped establish the lineage of one of England's most powerful dynasties, the Tudors. Their son, Edmund Tudor, later wed Margaret Beaufort, shaping a lineage that would produce Henry VIII, the notorious founder of the Tudor dynasty that would shape English history through tumult and transformation. It's a remarkable irony that the very dynasty synonymous with severed heads and religious upheaval was birthed from a queen who dared to defy convention for love. Catherine's life was a brief one. She passed at 35, likely unaware of the monumental impact of her decisions. After her passing, her children were seized into royal guardianship, and Owen was imprisoned, underscoring how Catherine's choices continued to unsettle the monarchy even after death. Yet, the legacy of her love epoch still lingered on, shaping England's heritage for over 100 years. There remain no eternal love letters or grand portraits of her with Owen Tudor. No monuments celebrate their quiet rebellion. Instead, their legacy thrives, not in stone or riches, but through the veins of British nobility, reminding us all that amid rigid royal traditions, love can forge unexpected pathways. And while Catherine's romance birthed a future king, her daughter-in-law's sister, Mary Tudor, would soon scandalize Europe with an impulsive marriage that nearly ignited a diplomatic crisis. In a daring act of love, she turned royal protocol into collateral damage in her pursuit of happiness. In the annals of history, we encounter the remarkable story of Mary Tudor, Queen of France, a fleeting royal presence, yet a figure of immense courage and beauty. As the youngest surviving child of Henry VIII and Elizabeth of York, Mary embodied a striking allure that captured the attention of diplomats. Her upbringing was steeped in the harsh realities of political marriage, where love often bowed to ambition, and her fate was a well-oiled machine of royal strategy. In 1514, the chessboard of her future was set. At just 18, her brother, King Henry VIII, orchestrated an alliance by marrying her off to the elderly King Louis XII of France. This man, decades her senior and with a frail constitution, seemed an unlikely match. Nonetheless, Mary, displaying resilience, silently negotiated a promise from Henry. Upon Louis's death, she would be free to choose her own partner. It was a precarious deal, for her heart was already claimed by Charles Brandon, the Duke of Suffolk. A favourite at court and a gallant soldier, Brandon was decidedly non-royal, yet their bond was undeniable. After a brief marriage, just 3 months, Louis passed away, likely due to overexertion following their wedding. Now a widowed queen, Mary found herself at a crossroads of power, wealth, and vulnerability. French nobility quickly sought to entangle her again in the web of political marriages. Yet, fiercely determined, Mary summoned Brandon to France under a guise of diplomacy, despite her brother's explicit warnings against any romantic entanglement. In a secret defiance of royal codes, they wed, a decision that sparked outrage upon discovery. The backlash was swift. Henry's fury echoed through the halls of power, labeling their union a scandal that mirrored treason, driven by pure passion. However, Henry's rage eventually gave way to compassion, perhaps swayed by brotherly love or a grudging respect for their audacity. Their penalty, a hefty fine, was more symbolic than punitive, and they returned to England, where they navigated the treacherous waters of court life under watchful eyes. Their marriage, lasting nearly 20 years, was rare among the tumultuous Tudor era, blessed with children and the favour of the court. Yet, while their love story flourished, Mary's once prominent position faded. Not a tragic figure marked by execution or exile, she carved out a quieter existence, resonating with the tale of a woman who chose love over duty and paid a personal price for her defiance. Mary became an emblem of romantic rebellion, illuminating a path where love could thrive amid the rigors of power, demonstrating that even within a dynasty notorious for its treachery, not all risks resulted in ruin. Yet, the next queen to follow would navigate a far more perilous landscape. Anne of Austria, known to history as Anne of Denmark, would contend not only with her reign over England but also with murmurs of intrigue and the complexities of emotional bonds ensnared in the political maelstrom of the court. Her legacy would, intriguingly, pose more questions than it answered. Anne of Austria, also known as Anne of Denmark, is a figure in history whose legacy fluctuates between recognition and obscurity. Often slipping into the shadow of her husband, James VI of Scotland and I of England, her identity has been glossed over as mere backdrop in a grand royal narrative. Yet, beneath the crown, she was a queen consort celebrated for her intellect, sensitivity to the arts, and a life entwined in complexities that historians remain eager to decode. Navigating a monarchy in transition from the rigid structures of medieval times to a more theatrical, public spectacle, and established a court that served as a vibrant convergence of art and social interaction. Captivated by the grandeur of her new life, she entered the Scottish court at just 14, a foreign Danish princess, Protestant, and refined, yet woefully unarmed for the tumultuous Scottish weather or her husband's elusive affections. The couple's relationship was marred by a cautious political dance, where tenderness was overshadowed by detached diplomacy. As the mother of several children, including the ill-fated Prince Henry and future monarch Charles I, Anne's domestic life was tumultuous, strained with conflict over their children's upbringing and finances. One painful episode saw James take baby Henry from her grasp, a devastating act that sowed seeds of distrust in her heart. In the wake of her emotional turmoil, and carve her own space within the court, collaborating with artists, musicians, and playwrights that transformed her court into a tapestry of artistic expression and personal depth. The courtly performance known as the Masque, a blend of dance, music, and visuals, became emblematic of her reign. Not merely an observer, and was an active participant, donning rich fabrics and embodiments of deities and virtues. Every performance told not just a story, but whispered subtext. In a realm where her voice lacked authority, she found agency through the art of expression. Amid a court shrouded in intrigue, rumors enveloped and, particularly regarding her association with George VI, the Duke of Buckingham. Though linked to King James, VI's closeness with and sparked speculation of rivalry and possibly deeper connections. Further suspicion arose from her relationships with women like Jean Drummond and Margaret Stuart, where correspondence hinted at profound intimacy, yet left the true nature of their bonds tantalizingly ambiguous. And, always enigmatic, navigated her world with an awareness of deniability, maintaining her image as a cultured queen while deflecting the scrutiny that surrounded her. When her husband died in 1625, and had passed away 5 years prior, veiled in mystery even in death. Her romantic legacy intrigues because of the very absence of confirmed truths. No scandalous letters or definitive proof emerged, just a swirling enigma of intimate connections and the distinctive freedoms women could navigate while being perceptively observed. Living on the cusp of power, perhaps close to emotional liberation, Anne's true essence remains ambiguous. She perfected a performance of self that leaves us pondering what was genuine and what was crafted. As Anne's shadowy court left so much to the imagination, her successor, Henrietta Maria of France, would not enjoy such anonymity. Every action, every friendship, and every flirtatious whisper would come under intense scrutiny and utilization in the propagandistic landscape of the Civil War. For Henrietta, being Catholic, French, and married to Charles I had already positioned her precariously, but her charm sealed her complex fate in history. Henrietta Maria of France entered England under a cloud of uncertainty. At just 15 years old, she arrived speaking French, practicing Catholicism, and adorned with a crown too extravagant for a nation rife with religious strife. Her marriage to Charles I in 1625 was a delicate political maneuver designed to ease the tensions between Catholic France and Protestant England. Rather than quelling conflicts, her presence reignited them, becoming a symbol of the unresolved scars left by the English Reformation. The union was anything but harmonious. Charles, who was pious yet reserved, found himself juggling the complexities of Henrietta's vibrant personality and foreign customs against the backdrop of a frigid English court. Her entourage, a mix of priests, artists, and loyal ladies, clashed with those who served the king, and many viewed her not as a queen but as an infiltrator. However, against the odds, love blossomed between Henrietta and Charles, catching even their critics off guard with its intensity. Their letters, filled with secret devotion and yearning, stand as a testament to their bond. But the ardor of their hearts did little to shield Henrietta from the scrutiny of a nation anxious about her luxury, Catholic faith, and keen desire for the spotlight. While Charles preferred a samba reign rooted in moral virtue, Henrietta revelled in spectacle, participating in courtly masques and surrounding herself with creativity. Such liveliness sparked gossip, with figures close to her becoming fodder for scandal. George Gage, a Catholic diplomat, and poet Richard Crashaw were closely monitored, while her male attendants, loyal but often misunderstood, bore the brunt of Puritan suspicions. Each shred of intimacy was viewed through a lens of distrust, casting Henrietta as a dangerous figure in a time of escalating paranoia. When the English Civil War erupted, her role evolved. No longer merely a queen, she became Charles's confidant and strategic partner, seeking funds and arms overseas. Her letters reveal her as a passionate strategist, tirelessly working to rally support for the royalist cause, while her actions earned her both enemy ire and royalist admiration. Following Charles's execution in 1649, Henrietta found herself in exile, first in France and then leading a life of relative poverty, always advocating for her son's return to power. In her twilight years, living at a convent, she remained a complex figure, identified by many as a dangerous foreign influence who adorned England with her lavish tastes and fervent expressions of love. Thus, the legacy of Henrietta Maria is one woven through the fabric of affection as a form of resistance, loyalty viewed as rebellion, and the fashion of protest. The romantic undertones of her relationships thrived in a world unprepared to accept a woman unafraid to express herself, whether in love or in prayer. And when the legacy of Henrietta Maria took a turn, the burdens of her love would echo forward, shaping the life of her successor, Queen Anne, whose own entangled story would be marked not by war but by a woman named Sarah. Queen Anne, an intriguing figure in history who reigned over the unification of England and Scotland, endured the agony of multiple miscarriages and left no living heir. Yet, her legacy resonates intensely, not through military victories or legislative achievements, but through her deeply complicated relationships with two remarkable women, Sarah Churchill and Abigail Masham. Their presence stirred whispers across the court, altering political landscapes and weaving a narrative rich in emotional depth, one that humanizes Queen and beyond her royal title. Born in 1665 to James, Duke of York, who would eventually become James II, and was not expected to ascend to the throne. Described as reserved, devout, and emotionally guarded, she was fiercely loyal to a select few who penetrated her defenses, and married Prince George of Denmark, whose limited political role left their marriage largely uneventful, albeit affectionate. However, her most profound connections lay not with him. Enter Sarah Churchill, later the Duchess of Marlborough, Anne's closest companion and political advisor for nearly 40 years. Their bond, ignited in their teenage years, evolved into an emotionally charged correspondence that later generations interpreted through modern lenses. They shared playful nicknames suggesting a friendship of equals, yet the balance of influence often tipped, revealing a dynamic fraught with tension. Sarah, witty, candid, and politically savvy, was unafraid to voice her opinions, including challenging the Queen directly through private letters filled with advice, flattery, and occasional manipulation, and, in turn, offered steadfast loyalty and emotional depth that unsettled those around them. Yet, within the politically charged realm of the early 18th century, their relationship could not escape scrutiny. Sarah's ambitions began to test Anne's patience, especially as the Queen's sense of authority evolved. Into this shifting landscape stepped Abigail Masham, a striking contrast to Sarah, modest, outwardly unambitious, and quietly wise. As a cousin of Sarah's, her implementation into Anne's life felt like a subtle betrayal. Introduced by Sarah, Abigail emerged as the new confidant, fulfilling the Queen's personal needs and gradually overshadowing Sarah's influence. As Sarah, sensing her own waning power, accused Abigail of manipulation, she hinted at inappropriate affection between the Queen and her new favourite, allegations lacking concrete evidence but gaining traction among the public. The gossip infiltrated London's pamphlets and coffee houses, framing and as a ruler swayed by emotion rather than intellect, a narrative part smear campaign and part reflection of her intimate political reality. Amidst these swirling rumours, and remained steadfastly silent in public, though her letters reveal the emotional intricacies of her attachments. She grieved the harshness of Sarah while finding solace in Abigail's gentleness. Throughout significant historical events, such as the War of the Spanish Succession and the rise of party politics, and navigated the intricate balance of governance and personal loyalty. A complex figure by nature, she was powerful yet often isolated, publicly stoic, yet emotionally vibrant behind closed doors. As Anne's story neared its conclusion, the nature of her affections remained a tantalizing enigma. Yet perhaps therein lies the essence of her life. Amidst royal protocols, her heart's true ownership was ever elusive. Just as the world grappled with her depth of feeling, so too did Anne navigate through an existence fraught with limitations on her emotional freedoms. Following her reign, another remarkable woman emerged, Lady Mary Wortley Montagu, less royal yet radical in spirit. A writer, satirist, and diplomat's wife, she not merely weathered scandal but immortalized it with her pen. In the shadows of the palace, Queen Anne may have wielded power, but it was Lady Mary Wortley Montagu who penned her legacy with the precision of a rapier. Born in 1689 to privilege, she was married into political circles and transcended her era through her extraordinary writings, catching the attention of many, especially at a time when women were expected to remain silent, embroidering polite letters about mundane subjects. Instead, Lady Mary ignited her quill against the prevailing hypocrisy, crafting sharp satirical verses and revealing letters pregnant with intrigue, her words resonating like a siren call amidst royal decorum. Educated beyond her time, Mary devoured literature hidden in her father's library, emerging not as a meek aristocrat but as a formidable intellectual force. Her marriage to Edward Wortley Montagu, marked by her own defiance in choosing him, proved lackluster, devoid of the stimulation she craved. A spark ignited with the famed poet Alexander Pope, their friendship evolving into a complex web of affection and animosity, immortalized through their often bitter correspondence. His ardor contrasted with her cool, ironic stance, creating a tantalizing puzzle of emotions and rivalrous banter. But it was later, during her self-imposed exile, where she met the charismatic philosopher Francesco Algarotti, with whom she shared a correspondence laced with admiration and flirtation. Their connection, shrouded in ambiguity, revealed the magnetic pull of intellect and mutual fascination, and he became the rare subject of her writings not turned into jest. However, Mary's true brilliance lay not merely in her romantic pursuits but in her candid reflections on love. Her letters combined a stark realism with an almost hesitant respect for romance, portraying love as a game entwined with power and narrative, challenges she embraced fully, unmasked by false modesty and resolute in her belief that her voice deserved to be heard. Her medical advocacy marked another rebellion. Having witnessed smallpox inoculation in the Ottoman Empire, she battled the backlash of the medical community to promote this life-saving practice in England, saving countless lives while alienating herself from traditional female roles within society. Lady Mary was a queen of her own domain, challenging societal norms with unabashed fervor. Her romances were intellectual explorations, never veiled in secrecy, but rather provocations that she lived unapologetically. Following in her turbulent wake was the tragic figure of Princess Charlotte of Wales. Adored by the public yet burdened with sorrow, Charlotte's existence became a national emblem of romantic dreams turned bitter tragedy. At just 21, her premature death transformed her story into one of idealistic passion entwined with devastating cost, a somber legacy the monarchy would ultimately struggle to overcome. Lady Mary and Princess Charlotte, each remarkable in their way, showcased the complex tapestry of love, ambition, and heartache woven into the fabric of history. Princess Charlotte of Wales, a figure ensconced in the very fabric of British history. Born in 1796, she was the offspring of George, Prince of Wales, later George IV, and his controversial wife, Caroline of Brunswick. Their marriage was fraught with animosity, a veritable soap opera that thrust Charlotte into the spotlight as the only legitimate heir, ensnared in her parents' turbulent relationship. In a world that expected compliance from royal daughters, Charlotte emerged as a beacon of independence, not traditionally beautiful but captivating with her authenticity. She expressed herself freely, exhibiting a moral fortitude that made her both cherished by the public and a thorn in the side of the establishment. As her marriage loomed, the stakes were high. England was in a state of political unrest, longing for regeneration. When she boldly rejected the proposal from Prince William of Orange, it sent ripples through the nation. Then fate introduced her to Prince Leopold of Saxe-Coburg, a man who embodied all that the court desired. Their love blossomed amidst the pressures of public scrutiny, as he listened and earned her trust, giving her the rare opportunity to choose for herself in a world defined by obligation. Their wedding in 1816, while understated, marked a significant emotional moment in royal history. The couple enjoyed a life at Claremont House, though constantly under the watchful eye of the public. Their joy heightened as Charlotte became pregnant in 1817. Yet, in a cruel twist of fate, after a harrowing labor, she delivered a stillborn son and tragically succumbed to complications soon after. The nation collectively mourned, an outpouring of grief unlike anything before, signaling not just the loss of a young woman, but the death of an ideal. Charlotte had embodied a more relatable monarchy, one marked by emotional connections and moral integrity. Her demise left a profound void, compelling her uncles into a frenzied race for heirs, ultimately leading to the birth of Queen Victoria. Charlotte fought valiantly to rewrite the narrative of the monarchy through love. Yet, with her passing began a new chapter where emotional alliances would become entrenched within the power corridors. The next chapter introduces Sarah Churchill, a woman who wielded influence both in matters of heart and state, casting a long shadow over the Queen herself. 19. Sarah Churchill, Duchess of Marlborough, was an enigma. Though she never donned a crown or held the title of a princess, her life was intricately woven into the fabric of British monarchy in a way that belied her initial expectations simply to be a wife. Born Sarah Jennings, she became perhaps the most powerful and controversial woman in royal history. Instead of leading troops, she commanded respect from generals, and while she didn't serve Queen and in the conventional sense, she fundamentally reshaped her reign. Often reduced to mere anecdotes of admiration and rivalry, Sarah's saga is akin to describing a tempest as a mere breeze. From the beginning of their relationship, when Anne was merely a young princess grappling with insecurity, Sarah provided unwavering support and candor that the future queen found compelling. They exchanged nicknames, illustrating a closeness that transcended their social standing, yet Sarah always understood her role, just outside of royal directness but firmly on the path of influence. Despite the apparent stability of Anne's marriage to Prince George of Denmark, it was Sarah who truly held sway over Anne's emotional realm. This closeness stirred murmurs within the court. While whispers suggested their bond extended beyond mere friendship, they remained unspoken yet omnipresent. Their correspondence, filled with passionate emotions, often blurred lines between political allegiance and personal affection. The true nature of their bond, whether romantic in a physical sense or not, is difficult to determine, but its intensity was undeniable. Sarah's proximity to and also allowed her husband, John Churchill, the Duke of Marlborough, to flourish in his military endeavours, with much of his success attributed to Sarah's significant sway with the Queen. She brokered appointments, directed strategies, and wielded immense influence through a mere note or a look. Ministers courted her favour, while ambassadors tread delicately around her. But then, like a sudden storm, the intricate dynamic began to unravel. as Sarah's straightforwardness turned abrasive, and her ambitions clashed with Anne's burgeoning independence. The arrival of Abigail Masham, a quieter cousin of Sarah's, signaled a shift in the court's emotional landscape. Abigail's tender approach offered a contrast to Sarah's once-cherished directness, setting off a fierce contest for the Queen's attention that rippled into the political arena. Sarah, confident in her long-standing role, misjudged Anne's need for a softer touch. Frustrated by Anne's choices and criticisms of Abigail, Sarah's desperate letters ultimately pushed the Queen away. What began as friendship morphed into an emotional explosion, resulting in Sarah's dismissal. Officially framed as a political decision, it signified the culmination of years of intertwined lives. Once the Queen's confidant, Sarah found herself distanced from the palace, an outsider in both the royal court and the Queen's confidence. Yet, Sarah did not silently fade away. She penned memoirs, assertively curating her story and ensuring her voice reverberated through history, a legacy not many courtiers possessed the foresight to grasp. The tapestry of Sarah Churchill's life reveals a woman of sharp brilliance, deep loyalty, and intricate manipulation, whose connection with and transcended mere governance. It defined who they both were. Yet, the same dependence that afforded her power also led her to miscalculate her own worth, paying dearly for her belief in her irreplaceability. As Sarah's reign of influence waned, a different story began. She left the stage, and from the shadows emerged Elizabeth Woodville. With a distinct journey that revolved around passion and seduction, Elizabeth would capture a king's heart, bear royal offspring, and against all odds, navigate her fate with her head still intact. Her ascent to the throne was not marked by political stratagems but rather through scandal, cunning, and a trail of whispers, forever altering the course of history. Elizabeth Woodville, a widow and commoner, transformed the landscape of 15th century England not by bloodline, but through daring ambition. Marrying King Edward IV, she defied the expectations of her time, securing her position not merely for love, but as part of an undefinable alliance between desire and power. Her journey began with the loss of her husband, Sir John Grey, a knight who fell in the tumultuous Wars of the Roses, a period marked by fluctuating loyalties among noble families vying for dominance. Left vulnerable with 2 sons, Elizabeth retreated to her family's estate in Grafton, a location of noble origins but of limited political clout. The story goes that under an oak tree, she awaited the passing of the charismatic Edward IV, seeking to reclaim her son's inheritance. This moment, whether truly triggered by such dramatic flair or not, caught Edward's eye. He was drawn to Elizabeth's beauty and elegance, and unlike others, she would not easily yield to his desires. Her refusal to become a mere mistress in a world of regal indulgence spoke volumes, not just of her courage but her political acumen. In a stunning act during 1464, Edward wed Elizabeth in secret. This shocking union defied the court's expectations, as advisers had sought advantageous ties with foreign nobility, only to see their king marry a widow with no dowry and ties to former adversaries. This bold marriage not only redefined Elizabeth's status but elevated her family to unforeseen heights. Titles, lands, and courtly roles flowed swiftly to her kin, inciting rage among the traditional nobility. Elizabeth's sisters connected with powerful families, while her brothers were ennobled and her father named Earl Rivers. For Elizabeth, it was a desperate bid for survival amidst a court fraught with danger. However, Elizabeth's triumphs were cut short with Edward's sudden death in 1483. Her son, Edward V, was swiftly taken by Richard, Duke of Gloucester, a man who would become Richard III. The mysterious vanishing of her royal sons from the Tower of London remains one of England's most enduring enigmas, with whispers of foul play swirling around Richard's involvement. Now politically alone and bereaved, Elizabeth sought refuge with her surviving children. Yet, She was not merely a victim of circumstance. In the turmoil that ensued, Elizabeth deftly forged alliances with the exiled Lancastrians. With Margaret Beaufort, she orchestrated the marriage of her daughter Elizabeth of York to Henry Tudor, effectively uniting the warring factions and laying the groundwork for the Tudor dynasty. This strategic act secured her family's legacy upon the throne, showcasing her remarkable capacity for survival, even at the expense of personal power. As for Elizabeth's early life and the tales of enchantment surrounding her seduction of Edward, those were never substantiated but spoke to her formidable influence in a man's world. Every victory she claimed sparked rumors of witchcraft. Yet, as the next chapter unfolds, we meet Arabella Churchill. Not a queen, nor married to a king, she too would leave a lasting impact by shaping succession through her bond with James II, proof that a woman need not wear a crown to wield power. Arabella Churchill, a name that history never planned to immortalize. Born in 1648, she wasn't the product of a noble lineage, nor was she celebrated for her beauty, nor did she ever aspire to wed a king. Yet, Arabella, through her understated yet significant role as the longtime mistress of James, Duke of York, later known as James II, established a legacy that eclipses many of her aristocratic peers. She achieved this without titles or elaborate displays, perhaps most remarkably, without the ambition for posthumous fame, which is precisely why she endures. Daughter of Sir Winston Churchill, Arabella was part of a respectable but not particularly notable gentrified family. Her younger brother, John Churchill, would later gain fame as the first Duke of Marlborough, a figure of military renown. However, before his triumphs on the battlefield, it was Arabella who subtly laid the groundwork for the Churchill family's elevation to noble heights, not through military conquests or diplomacy, but through closeness to power. As a maid of honor to James's first wife, and Hyde, Arabella entered the court, a youthful intellectual, seemingly unremarkable by royal standards. Her likable demeanor likely explained why she captured the Duke's interest. Despite speculation on James's motives, whether drawn to her sharp wit or her quiet presence in a court full of ambition, Arabella was not the conventionally beautiful choice. Accounts paint her as possessing a distinctive nose and somewhat awkward grace. Yet this may have been part of her allure. She did not dazzle but rather charmed those around her. Their liaison, which began around 1665 and spanned over a decade by royal mistress timelines, led to the birth of 4 children, including James Fitzjames, destined to become the Duke of Berwick and a respected military figure himself. Though born out of wedlock, her offspring were recognized, their legitimacy manipulated within the complex web of political maneuvers. In a stark contrast to the excesses of Charles II's court, where mistresses like Barbara Villiers and Nell Gwynn revelled in the limelight, Arabella remained modest and unassuming. She did not vie for marriage or public recognition, choosing instead to exist on the periphery while raising her children, who would eventually carve out their own reputations. As time wore on, James's affections shifted, transitioning to new companions. Arabella herself eventually wed Charles Godfrey, a figure of dependability, bearing additional children. Yet, even after her tenure with the Duke concluded, her influence persisted. Her son, the Duke of Berwick, became a steadfast ally to James II, enduring even through the king's exile. The Churchills, once a fringe part of society, had now woven themselves into the very fabric of royalty. Arabella's narrative may lack the explosive drama of scandal, but therein lies its intrigue. She flourished in a court drenched in spectacle by steering clear of it. She didn't demand authority, she generated it. Instead of buying influence, she nurtured the next generation of royal offspring. In a realm obsessed with displays, Arabella showcased that one didn't need to shine brightly to wield power. All that was required was presence, patience, and careful positioning. As Arabella subtly maneuvered in the shadows, another woman entered the stage with grand aspirations, Nell Gwyn. Though she lacked noble blood, she embraced the essence of royalty, captivating the public and achieving a legendary status of her own. Where Arabella navigated the subtleties of court life, Nell, with open arms, seized the spotlight and the heart of a king with unapologetic flair. Nell Gwyn, the quintessential figure of Restoration England, was the dazzling star and the unexpected twist in the narrative of her time. Though she never donned a crown or married a nobleman, her vibrant spirit and captivating charm ensnared the heart of King Charles II and won the affection of the public. Even centuries later, her name evokes laughter and boldness, embodying a unique legacy. Born in 1650, in what could be described as modest beginnings, Nell's path to fame was anything but traditional. Her mother was involved in the brothel trade in Covent Garden, and Nell first sold oranges at the King's Theatre, where she attracted the notice of actor Charles Hart. Whether her trade was just fruit or her own allure remains a topic of speculation, yet her swift rise from obscurity to the limelight is undeniable. Nell was a performer unlike the others, lacking formal training or the polished refinement of her peers. Instead, she brought electricity to the stage with her comedic talent and infectious smile that even critics couldn't resist. She was celebrated for her roles in which women dressed as men, offering the audience a titillating glimpse of rebellion and humor. Beyond mere performance, Nell possessed a relatable charm that endeared her to all. In no time, the theatre led her to the royal court. Around the late 1660s, King Charles II, a man drawn to wit and beauty, began his affair with Nell. It transformed from playful flirtation to a profound connection. While the king had many lovers, including Barbara Villiers and Louise de Keroualle, Nell stood apart. Her background wasn't noble. She made no pretenses for titles or virtue. Experience bred a refreshing authenticity, and the public readily embraced her. She was Protestant, English, and exuded humor and warmth, contrasting sharply with the more contentious figures of the court. When mistaken for Louise and harassed by a mob, Nell bravely declared from her carriage, "Pray, good people, I am the Protestant whore," showcasing her cleverness and perfectly embodying her brand. Nell bore Charles 2 sons, one who died early, while the other, Charles Beauclerk, received a title and a promise of a future. Unlike many of Charles's illegitimate offspring, his affection for Nell meant her son was afforded a noble standing. Yet, Nell never pushed for marriage or a higher social rank. Her simple requests were for security for her children and herself, humorously asserting her place when she candidly told the king, "I am poor, and I want bread," a statement that from others might have seemed needy, but from her felt strategic. Their bond lasted until his passing in 1685, and it is said that in his final moments he requested assurances for Nell's well-being, declaring, "Let not poor Nellie starve." And indeed, she was provided for, receiving a pension that granted her a comfortable existence. Nevertheless, her health deteriorated swiftly, leading to her demise in 1687 at a mere 37 years of age. Nell Gwyn's story is not merely one of allure or charisma. It symbolizes a defiance against cultural norms. She entered the royal bedchamber without titles, leaving behind a profound legacy. Through laughter and wit, she challenged a court that often took itself too seriously. Scandal followed her, not from intent but from her genuine nature. While she served as the people's beloved mistress, the following consort of Charles II would seize her chance with cold ambition. Her name was Louise de Keroualle, who transformed seduction into a political act, placing the heart of a king into the realm of international intrigue. In the complex tapestry of the royal court, one figure stands out: Louise Derouai, Duchess of Portsmouth. While Nell Gwyn was celebrated as the darling of the people, Louise's allure was magnetic, drawing the attention of England's king, Charles II. She entered this world not by accident, but with a well-structured game plan. Fluent in seduction and strategy, Louise was not simply there to dazzle Charles, she intended to shape his decisions. Appointed by France, Louise expertly navigated the tricky waters of royal favor, captivating a king while arousing disdain from the English court. Born in 1649 to a lesser noble French family, Louise was groomed in the intricacies of royal etiquette amid the burgeoning power of Louis XIV. Her journey to Charles began in the French court, where she served the king's sister, leading her into the orbit of the English monarchy. Following the controversial death of Henrietta Louise remained in England, mourning but quickly transitioning to a position of influence. Charles II, adept at royal relations, found something distinctly different in Louise. Unlike the tempestuous Barbara Vierce or the earthy Nell, Louise was composed and strategic, knowing when to flatter and how to make her desires known without seeming desperate. However, her role went beyond romance. Many speculate she acted as a spy, with the French court providing her with funding and rewards in exchange for her influence over Charles' policies. In a landscape rife with scandal, Louise became a paragon of decorum, adopting English fashions and publicly converting to Anglicanism. Yet, despite her polished image, she faced intense public backlash. Dubbed a foreigner who drained the nation's purse and fostered Catholic sympathies, Louise became a target for satirical ridicule, embodying fears of foreign control. Nevertheless, she maintained her poise, never drawing the theatrical ire that Nell or Barbara did. Her time with Charles yielded one legitimate son, Charles Lennon, Duke of Richmond, whom she positioned firmly within the noble hierarchy, with land, titles, and a legitimate future. Practical, unflinching, and always anticipating her critics, Louise thrived in a precarious balance of power. Yet, her fortunes shifted dramatically with Charles' death in 1685. With James II as his successor, Louise faced dismissal amid rising tensions between England and France and returned home to a quieter life at Versailles, respected yet removed from power. Louise's legacy is a nuanced saga. She never made a grand spectacle but orchestrated influential changes that reshaped politics. A master of the subtle game between passion and pragmatism, she remained an enigmatic figure, while her contemporary Barbara Vierce emerged as a stark contrast. Barbara was exuberant, bold in her pursuit of power, and utterly unrestrained in her romantic escapades. For Barbara, seduction was not just an art, it was a way of shaping her dynasty, akin to collecting royal treasures. 24. Barbara Villiers, Duchess of Cleveland. Known by many titles, Lady Castlemaine, the Countess of Castlemaine, and the Duchess of Cleveland, most of England simply referred to her as Barbara. Her name alone evoked rumors of scandal, luxury, and the tantalizing sound of court curtains parting. A woman who was no royal by blood, Barbara maneuvered through the Stuart court with the force of a tempest. She was unabashedly sensual, fiercely ambitious, and entwined with King Charles II in a partnership that demanded grandeur, prestige, and influence. Born in 1640 to a royalist family diminished by the turmoil of the English Civil War, her life embodied both rich privilege and stark hardship. Barbara's radiant beauty, dark hair, full lips, chiseled cheekbones, and piercing eyes commanded attention. She wed Roger Palmer in 1659, a loyal Catholic of lesser note, perhaps believing for a moment that her political ambitions would remain modest. But soon, she became the center of attention, while her husband faded into obscurity under a noble title but a tarnished reputation. When Charles II reclaimed the throne in 1660, Barbara was not just one of the first to greet him. She was the first to claim her place as his mistress, unabashedly flaunting her role. Provided with lavish quarters at Whitehall Palace, She attended royal events with queenly bearing and ensured her presence was inescapable. Charles cherished her, and she made that affection known. Unlike the sweet Nell Gwyn or the graceful Louise de Carouet, Barbara was tempestuous and bold, captivating the king with her intense spirit. Their relationship resembled a tumultuous dance rather than a mere romance, replete with conflict, rich silks, and profound scandal. Together, they bore 5 acknowledged children, each elevated in status, with one daughter marrying into nobility and a son becoming Duke of Grafton. Yet, Barbara was more than a mother. She wielded her offspring as instruments of political leverage. However, her heart was not solely loyal to Charles. While he was preoccupied with state matters and other affairs, Barbara engaged a variety of lovers behind the velvet drapes of a palace. Soldiers, courtiers, and foreign diplomats found themselves entwined in her captivating world, and the gossip surrounding her was ceaseless. The king was aware, as was the entire court, yet Barbara's position was too firmly entrenched for her to be easily cast aside. She had become a fundamental part of the court's power dynamics. Her informal influence reshaped reputations and alliances. With a mere glance, she could dismantle a name or engineer a court appointment through a whisper. Ministers trembled at her presence while poets and satirists fueled their careers lampooning her. All met with her dispassionate indifference. She possessed the one thing they craved: access. In the court, access was the ultimate currency. As time progressed, however, Barbara's grip began to wane. Charles's attentions began to roam toward younger, more politically savvy courtesans like Louise de Carouet, leading Barbara to displays of erratic behavior and unpredictable tantrums. Eventually, Charles ennobled her with the title of Duchess of Cleveland and orchestrated a comfortable pension, effectively compensating her volatility with grandeur. She departed from court, but not before securing her children's futures and her own status among the elite. Barbara outlived Charles, remaining in the shadows of the royal world that once revolved around her. She passed away in 1709, a woman of wealth and title, still infamous. By this time, she stood as a remnant of a bygone era where mistresses wielded not only the affections of kings but influenced the very pulse of a nation. She crafted beauty into power, lust into clout, and scandal into a legacy. Though not cherished by the public or celebrated by historians, she lingered in memory, and for Barbara Villiers, that held significant worth. In stark contrast to Barbara's flamboyant narrative, the last figure to examine wore her fame like an elegant fragrance, soft yet impactful. She was revered before her royal ascent, pursued by dukes, adored by the populace, ultimately ascending to the throne without ever having required a scandal to etch her fate. Her name was Elizabeth Beauce-Lyon, and she represented serenity amid centuries of turmoil. Queen Elizabeth Beauce-Lyon, often revered as the Queen Mother, epitomized the spirit of post-war Britain with her soft pastel hats and luminous pearls. Yet, before she became a national figure of comfort and strength during crises and celebrated coronations, Elizabeth was a spirited young aristocrat, characterized by her curious smile and a captivating gleam in her eye. A product of the Scottish nobility, Elizabeth was the 9th of 10 siblings, raised within the illustrious yet UN royal Glamis Castle, a space steeped in rich traditions, draped in tartan, and whispered of ghostly tales. The Beauce-Lyon family was affluent and well-connected, but few envisioned their daughter ascending to queenship, least of all Elizabeth herself. Even in her debutant days, she commanded attention. By her 20s, Elizabeth earned the title of Britain's most eligible young woman, with a grace that captivated the London elite. She was fashionable, alluring, and remarkably scandal-free, attracting suitors who longed for her company. Among those vying for her affection was Prince Albert, Duke of York, known affectionately as Bertie. A reserved soul, He was the second son of King George V, someone who never expected to be king but found himself deeply in love with Elizabeth. His persistence was unwavering, proposing to her 3 times before she consented. Her initial refusals weren't born from a lack of feeling. Rather, they arose from an acute awareness of the royal family's public demands, the transparent scrutiny, the rigid etiquette, and the inevitable sacrifice of personal freedom. Elizabeth's eventual acceptance of Bertie's proposal in 1923 wasn't merely capitulation. It was a well-considered decision. She embraced royal life with a clear understanding of its weighty responsibilities. Right from their wedding, which marked the first ever royal ceremony televised through newsreels, Elizabeth signaled the dawn of a more media-aware monarchy. With remarkable grace, she balanced her new dual capacities of charm and obligation, subtly reshaping Bertie's public persona long before he ascended the throne. Their early years were filled with travel, children, and public duties, but they initially seemed destined to linger in the background of royal influence. However, the dramatic abdication crisis of 1936 reshaped everything when Edward VIII, Bertie's elder brother, chose love over duty, thereby catapulting Elizabeth into the role of Queen Consort. Though she took to this newfound responsibility with reluctance, she never revealed her hesitations. Long before she was recognized as a national figure during the war or a matriarch to a future queen, Elizabeth had been wooed by not only princes but a multitude of noblemen. Her elegance appeared effortless, but her selections were carefully considered. While her romance has often been depicted as dignified and replete with responsibilities, it belied the affection she invoked and received. Unlike her royal predecessors, Elizabeth's narrative wasn't marred by scandal or exile but enriched by her influence, strength, and loyalty. While her role as the contented wife and devoted mother remains a familiar image, it overshadowed a dynamic journey of agency. She redefined the expectations of royal women, breaking away from tales of tumultuous loves and public scandals. With Elizabeth Beausoleil, the monarchy traded fervor for calm, replacing tumult with consistency. The era of scandalous queens closed with her, yet the whispers of the 24 women preceding her resonate through history, captured in portraits, letters, and the untidy intricacies that illuminate the dangerous liaisons of love, ambition, and power. Here, history reflects the profound connections of commitment amidst the chaos.